Morning, Mr. Lewis.
Guilty as
No, sir. This is initial hearing.
Oh.
We are not. You have a right to remain silent, and I expect you to exercise that. Okay, this is just telling you what the charges are. You do not listen. I'll give you a chance to talk. Not your time.
Throw me the bookie.
Stop talking.
Texas man, 55-year-old Michael Thomas Lewis, is charged with felony stalking of Clark, a plea not guilty entered on his behalf, despite the surprising outburst.
Guilty as
No.
In a 5-page court document filed on January 11th, Lewis is charged with repeated or continuing harassment of Caitlin Clark. Prosecutors saying Clark felt terrorized, frightened, intimidated, or threatened, and was in reasonable fear of sexual battery. Prosecutors saying that Lewis sent these threatening and sexually explicit messages to Clark on X. Some seem to indicate how close Lewis may have gotten to Clark. Lewis allegedly writing, "Been driving around your house 3 times a day." In another message allegedly writing, "I'm getting tickets. I'm sitting behind the bench." In another, "We're coming to you live from downtown Indy."
You're a survivor of sexual misconduct and you work with survivors. What more can be done to protect women athletes as they rise in popularity?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm also a survivor of a stalker early on in my career in television. And unfortunately, this can happen to public figures. The one thing I can say is that I'm incredibly hopeful that we've moved in the right direction because the police were taking this incredibly serious from the start. But what often happens is that something really bad has to happen to these women before they do take an interest. So before any of that happened, I feel great that they took it very seriously. But here's the other problem. Usually these stalkers end up getting a suspended sentence or some sort of probation, even though this person could get up to 6 years in prison. And we do need to start becoming more stringent in the penalties that we hand out, not just suspended sentences and not just probation, because it's when we really penalize these people that we can start to send the message that this is a serious threat to the safety of not only women, but men in the public eye.
And hey, just a quick break in the action. You should go subscribe to my new show, The Rick Strom Show. I'm going to be interviewing people from sports, music, journalists, authors, sports doctors. It's going to be fantastic. Please go subscribe. Thank you. Here's the latest. Local reporting wrote Lewis was behaving erratically in the courtroom when in front of Judge Angela Davis. At times he would chuckle while being seated in his chair. He'd claim he was not taking his medication and uttered he was living out of his car. Now, Fox 59 would also report the judge overheard Lewis saying, "Throw me the bookie," as in, give me the punishment for the crimes I am committed of. Then ESPN would put out a report of their own that Lewis is being held on $50,000 bail. He's been ordered to stay away from Hinkle Fieldhouse, where Butler plays, and Caitlin Clark's significant other is an assistant coach, and also Gainbridge Fieldhouse. He is not to have any contact with Clark. The times he did contact Clark, per Fox 59, was from the Twitter handle at RacerX2031. They were threatening and sexual messages, wrote the outlet. Now, if he were to post bond, Lewis would be forbidden from leaving the state of Indiana. In addition, he would be mandated to wear an ankle monitor. The man did not employ an attorney. Thus, Judge Davis assigned him a public defender. Good luck. The lawyer, on Lewis's behalf, entered a not guilty plea. NPR would have more of this story. The messages, which took place on the social media platform Twitter, began in mid-December and continued in January, even after the cops questioned him in Clark's town of Indianapolis, where she plays for the Fever. He would be arrested, reports NPR, on Sunday. So how did this all come about, you might be asking? The Indy Star has more. Federal investigators tracked the messages from IP addresses belonging to a hotel in the 100 block of West Market Street, roughly a mile from where the Fever play, and another from the Indianapolis Downtown Library. Save our libraries. It goes on. Indianapolis police said they confronted Lewis about the messages at the hotel on January 8th, to which Lewis responded he sent them just the same reason everybody makes posts. He at first would deny the threatening exchanges, but then added it was just an imaginary relationship. The messages continued after the police visit, per the affidavit. Here's how bad it was for a figure like Caitlin Clark. She altered her public appearances and patterns of movement due to fear for her safety. That's according to the charging docs that were released by the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. Of note, Lewis is due back in Marion County Superior Court on March 31st for a pretrial hearing. The prosecutor assigned to the case, Ryan Mears, would say, no matter how prominent a figure you are, this case shows that online harassment can quickly escalate to actual threats of physical violence. It takes a lot of courage for women to come forward in these cases, which is why many do not. In doing so, the victim is setting an example for all women who deserve to live and work in Indianapolis without the threat of sexual violence. NPR would add more to their story. This is the second recent case of a women's basketball player being stalked. As the Star's Chloe Peterson would point out, a Pacific Northwest man would be arrested in the state of Connecticut going back to September after he sent threatening messages to Paige Beckers, the UConn women's basketball star. That man was barred from all UConn and WNBA complexes, rightfully so. He would also be issued a restraining order. Let's also not forget, there was a viral moment that Josh Hawley and others had when a hearing was taking place with NCAA President Charlie Baker, because Mark Emmert is no longer that guy, and no longer holding that position. And what we saw was the theater that has become hearings on Capitol Hill, because it was about sports betting. And what did Josh Hawley and other Republicans do? They dog whistled to their audience by going after trans people and minimizing trans people and playing up to the boogeyman that is trans women in sports and the integrity of sports, which is a fugazi argument to say the least. We covered that. Check it out on demand. Baker would say players in last year's NCAA Division I women's basketball tourney received, quote, the most brutal, the most troubling, and the nastiest comments of any collegiate sport, Baker would state, we talked to a lot of the folks who played in those tournaments, and they said the stuff that comes in their DMs is a lot worse than what we are seeing on their public handle. And to that I say, no surprise whatsoever. How about this? Let's do a quick exercise here. Talk to a women's basketball player if you can. Talk to a female athlete. Doesn't even have to be a basketball player. Ask them what they get in their direct messages. Seriously. Ask them how terrible it feels after they reveal those. And then ask them if they feel safe. Because that's what this is about. Yes, the bigger story is being highlighted because it is affecting Caitlin Clark, and I hope somehow, some way, she can find some sort of peace. That being said, this is bigger than Caitlin Clark, because there are thousands of female athletes, whether it is women athletes, whether it is in the country or outside of, that have a story like this. They all have a story like this. So what are we going to do? Are we just going to keep holding congressional hearings in order to signal that a politician wants to fundraise off of an issue that is not an issue? Or are we actually going to protect women in women's sports? That's the bigger question for the Hawleys of the world. But if we're keeping it a buck, they're not going to, because they don't care to protect women in sports. They care about their next term in office. If you can and are willing, please become a paid member here at TYT Sports. And or go to tyt.com/join. In addition, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Appreciate it. Have a great day.